I text Ash, and I was like, Ash, like, where are you guys at? Because I thought that they were just going to run to the bank. That's the only thing I knew of that day. Finally, Ash called me, and Ash was like, hey, we're up at my mom's house, which is up in Milton. They own a farm. She was like, you know, Taylor's broke down and cried twice today. I'm like, what is going on?
33-year-old former police officer and private investigator Taylor Wright left her Pensacola, Florida home to run errands in September 2017 and never returned. At the time, she was entangled in a legal battle with her ex-husband while attempting to move on and start a new chapter. Waller became concerned when Wright failed to attend her birthday dinner, and her concern grew after she received a handful of cryptic text messages from Wright. The messages stated that Wright was trying to get her life on track, but it seemed unusual since the two women were in the process of moving in together. The last person to see Wright was her friend, crime scene technician Ashley McArthur, who claimed that the two had gone horseback riding together at a family farm in Milton. McArthur told investigators that Wright had left the property in an Uber with plans to go out for a beer. As the days passed, investigators began to suspect that Wright had met with foul play. Waller and Wright's ex-husband were ruled out as suspects, but McArthur remained on law enforcement's radar. She had recently deposited a $34,000 cashier's check in Wright's name to her bank account, telling police that Wright had asked her to safeguard the money. Detectives' suspicions were further heightened when phone location data revealed that McArthur had lied about being in Milton on the day of Wright's disappearance. She was actually at a rural family-owned property in Cantonment, but continued to maintain her innocence despite the inconsistencies in her stories. As the investigation entered its 6th week, police obtained a search warrant and headed to the Cantonment property, where they quickly discovered McArthur's body in a shallow grave. McArthur had been shot in the back of the head, and her remains were encased in concrete and potting soil. A closer look into McArthur's past revealed that she had a history of stealing and skimming money from her family's business and its customers. She had tried to destroy financial records by starting a fire, reflecting the lengths she was willing to go to cover her tracks. And while it was true that Wright had given McArthur the $34,000 check for safekeeping, McArthur had spent the money on herself. Shortly before she went missing, Wright had been ordered to pay $25,000 to her ex-husband at an upcoming court hearing. She planned to use the money from the check that she had given to McArthur, unaware that the funds were gone. Prosecutors theorized that rather than come clean to Wright, McArthur killed the woman. In 2019, McArthur was found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder, resulting in an automatic life sentence without parole. Number 32. Marie Quintanilla. In January of 2019, police in Waco, Texas, arrested 23-year-old Marie Quintanilla for allegedly faking her kidnapping several weeks earlier. The bizarre series of events leading up to Quintanilla's arrest began in mid-December of 2018 when the young woman told law enforcement that an acquaintance had assaulted her at gunpoint. She initially claimed that she had escaped to a nearby gas station, prompting law enforcement to issue a be-on-the-lookout notice based on the information Quintanilla had provided. At least one person was pulled over before Quintanilla recanted her story and admitted to investigators that she had made the whole thing up to get revenge. She was arrested 2 weeks later for making a false report, and the outcome of the case is unclear. Number 31. Fabiola Robles. After receiving a report about a drowning child in June of 2023, sheriff's deputies in Volusia County, Florida began rushing toward the scene. The 911 call was made by 47-year-old Fabiola Robles, who stated twice that her next-door neighbor's child was drowning while a dispatcher collected information. Two deputies were en route to the scene in Deltona in a shared vehicle, with their lights and sirens activated when the car was T-boned at an intersection. They were taken to the hospital with non-fatal injuries. In the meantime, other emergency responders made a beeline for the scene of the reported drowning, only to discover that no children's lives were in danger. In fact, there wasn't even a pool at the property, just an inflatable water slide. Robles' neighbor told law enforcement that Robles had been complaining all day about the noise of his children playing in their backyard. When confronted about the obvious discrepancies with her story, Robles admitted that she had not seen a child drowning. She was charged with misuse of 911 and was released from the Volusia County Jail after posting a $5,000 bond. In May of 2024, she pleaded nolo contendere to the charge and was granted deferred adjudication, which gave her an opportunity to avoid a conviction as long as she followed certain rules and fulfilled obligations set forth by the court for a specified time period. Records show that her probation was terminated in March of 2025 following her successful completion of the program. Number 30. Rose Pauls. In early April of 2019, police in Clarksville, Tennessee, responded to a call from 31-year-old Rose Pauls, who claimed that she had been robbed while out jogging at around 9:00 p.m. Law enforcement sent out a safety alert after taking the woman's report, and word of the incident caused concern throughout the community. As the investigation continued for the next several days, police received Crime Stoppers tips which seemed to indicate that the robbery never happened. They also discovered that Pauls had been at a local bar when she claimed the incident had occurred. After concluding that she had lied, police arrested her on a false report charge. Pauls was booked into the Montgomery County Jail in lieu of a $5,000 bond, and while the outcome of her case is unclear, she appeared to be active on social media not long after her arrest, while her name has remained largely absent from the news in recent years, indicating that she likely squared the matter away and moved on with her life. Number 29. Olivia Boomsma and Jacob Hellenbrand-Bell. Late one Sunday night in April of 2018, police were called to a motel in Portage, Wisconsin, where a man had been seen driving recklessly in his pickup truck in the snowy parking lot and aggressively confronting guests, causing them to feel unsafe. Responding officers spoke with the front desk clerk, 21-year-old Olivia Boomsma, who identified the disruptive man as her ex-boyfriend. Upon further investigation, it became evident that Boomsma had lied about who the man was and had given police a false name. Later that night, an officer by the name of Brian Lowenhagen spotted a truck matching the description of the suspect's vehicle outside a Quick Trip gas station. Boomsma was with the driver, 21-year-old Jacob Hellenbrand-Bell of Wanaki, who was on parole for a previous offense. Lowenhagen told Boomsma to remain seated in the truck as he went to arrest Hellenbrand-Bell, but the young woman ignored the instruction and punched the cop in the eye while he was attempting to handcuff the suspect. According to court documents, Boomsma repeatedly hit Lowenhagen while he told her to stop and tried pushing her away. In response to the officer's commands, she said, "What are you going to do? Shoot me?" Police body cam footage showed another officer, Sergeant Eric Walters, arriving on scene and grabbing Boomsma in an attempt to stop the attack on his colleague. They both fell to the ground and Hellenbrand-Bell kicked Walters in the face, knocking him out cold for more than 2 minutes. A nurse who happened to be nearby rushed over to intervene, giving Walters a chance to regain consciousness. After coming to, he grabbed Boomsma, who said she had a knife in her pocket and threatened to kill the officers. Both she and Hellenbrand-Bell were placed in separate patrol cars, where they continued to act combative. Hellenbrand-Bell was charged with battery to a law enforcement officer, resisting an officer, felony bail jumping, and disorderly conduct. He pleaded no contest to battery on a law enforcement officer in June of 2019 and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Boomsma was charged with battery to a law enforcement officer, threatening an officer, obstructing and resisting an officer, and disorderly conduct. She also took a plea deal and was sentenced to 2 years of probation. Number 28. Tiffani Obi. During the summer of 2019, 23-year-old Brooklyn resident Tiffani Obi contacted the NYPD and reported that her Chrysler Pacifica had been stolen, with her 6-year-old nephew inside the vehicle. She had left the key in the ignition while shopping and exited the store to find her car gone. Obi's 911 call triggered an urgent response, with additional officers being dispatched to address what they believed was a reported kidnapping. Police found the stolen vehicle 2 hours later, but there was no little boy inside. They paid Obi a visit and were relieved to find her nephew safe, but the situation raised some questions about the truthfulness of Obi's story, and she reportedly admitted that she had lied about her nephew being in her stolen car because she believed it would generate a faster response by law enforcement. The boy had been with Obi the entire time and was never in danger, amounting to a needless expenditure of police resources in response to an abduction that never happened. According to news reports, Obi told police that she had learned the technique to lie about a child being in a stolen car in order to make it a priority among law enforcement during a class she had taken at school. Obi was charged with making a false report while the unidentified car thief managed to elude capture. Number 27. Alexis Tejada. In a recent tragedy that made news headlines in early April of 2025, the roof of the Jet Set nightclub in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, collapsed shortly before 1 o'clock in the morning. At least 232 of the club's 515 patrons were killed, while 225 others were injured. Merengue musician Robbie Perez was performing on stage when the roof gave way without warning Around 400 emergency responders rushed to the scene and immediately began looking for survivors among the debris. 3 days after the collapse, which was caused by a structural failure which remains under investigation, a 28-year-old TikToker named Alexis Tejada was accused of robbing victims while posing as a survivor. During a live stream prior to his arrest, he claimed that the police were stealing people's belongings while they lie helplessly in the rubble, unable to free themselves from beneath heavy debris. Tejada feigned gratitude while stating that he felt lucky because not everyone was still around to talk about their experience. Reporters saw the footage and flocked to interview the influencer, who repeated his false claims in front of news cameras. Tejada had visible facial injuries in the videos, making it easy to believe he was a genuine survivor of the collapse, but he had actually hurt himself in a motorcycle accident, and police soon realized that he was lying. After being taken into custody at his home in Senavai, Tejada admitted that he had been untruthful. In an apology video, he claimed that he had felt pressured by people who were asking him questions. Sadly, he's not the only person who's been accused of capitalizing on the tragedy for personal gain. Several days after Tejada was arrested, a 32-year-old security guard named Rafael Rosario was arrested for lying in paid media interviews about being at the nightclub when the roof fell. He had falsely claimed to rescue about a dozen people, only to later offer a mea culpa while clarifying that he was not at the nightclub, that he didn't rescue anyone, and that he had lied about the police profiting from the incident. Rosario also admitted that he had been paid to share a fake story about being a survivor, and he asked viewers for their forgiveness. And police are reportedly working to identify and arrest any other individuals who may be telling tall tales about surviving the collapse. Number 26. Nadia Thurley. While working for the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary in December of 2020, rookie police officer Nadia Thurley began showing up at work with visible injuries and claiming that she was being stalked by her crazy ex-boyfriend Dan Jones. She filed 14 complaints against Jones over a 7-month period, during which time around 150 officers investigated her complaints. In one particularly shocking incident in March of 2021, Thurley claimed that Jones had confronted her with a knife in the sparsely populated New Forest district. She told her colleagues that she had escaped by running through the wilderness, but her clothes appeared perfectly clean, which seemed unusual given the muddy and boggy conditions of the area that she said she had crossed through. On another occasion, Thurley abruptly disappeared during a Zoom call with colleagues. She later claimed that she had been assaulted and that Jones had gotten her pregnant during the attack. Hoping to finally catch Jones, the detectives investigating Thurley's complaints covertly installed CCTV cameras at her home. To protect the integrity of the investigation, they didn't tell Thurley about the cameras. In July of that year, Thurley reported 2 assaults at her home, unaware that the team was monitoring her residence. Detectives were easily able to see that no one was at the home when the assault supposedly occurred. After determining that Thurley was lying, they arrested her on 2 counts of perverting the course of justice. In addition to believing that Thurley was being dishonest, prosecutors accused Thurley of making up her ex's existence altogether. They argued in court that Dan Jones wasn't a real person, but Thurley maintained her innocence and the case went to trial. In late 2023, she was found guilty by a jury. The judge imposed an 18-month suspended prison sentence, sparing her from any time behind bars, and ordered her to perform 150 hours of community service and to complete 40 hours of rehabilitation. Number 25. Kayla Montgomery. Little Harmony Montgomery vanished in October of 2019, but her disappearance went unnoticed by authorities until 2021, when her biological mother, Crystal Sorey, reported her missing. Harmony had been in the custody of her father, Adam Montgomery, and her stepmother, Kayla Montgomery, when she was last seen alive. Shortly before she went missing, Adam and Kayla had been evicted from their Manchester, New Hampshire apartment. The couple were living out of their car with Harmony and their 2 other children. Within days of the eviction, witnesses stopped seeing Harmony but noticed that the rest of the family was together. Adam had been granted full custody of Harmony due to her biological mother's struggle with substance abuse. He and Kayla retained custody of the little girl despite their precarious living arrangement, and even though a relative had called Child Protective Services after Adam had previously admitted to giving his daughter a black eye when confronted by law enforcement. Adam claimed that Harmony had been living with her mother since 2019, which detectives already knew was untrue. Police soon learned about his abusive nature from witnesses who revealed that the mistreatment had continued right up until Harmony vanished. Kayla Montgomery was arrested at least 3 times throughout the investigation, including for welfare fraud in January 2022, after failing to remove Harmony from her food stamp account after she disappeared. At around the same time, Adam was charged with assaulting Harmony. Later that month, police concluded that Harmony had been murdered, and Adam was charged accordingly in August of that year, after initially claiming to know nothing of Harmony's fate or whereabouts. Kayla admitted to witnessing her stepdaughter's murder and agreed to testify against Adam. She pleaded guilty to perjury in exchange for a 3.5 to 7-year sentence and was paroled in May of 2024. During Adam's trial, Kayla testified that her now ex-husband had beaten Harmony to death. He stashed the victim's remains in various places over a several-month period, including a cooler and a ceiling vent, before ultimately disposing of the body, which has never been found. Adam was found guilty of Harmony's murder in February of 2024 and is now serving a 45-year prison sentence. Number 24. Christopher Kratzer and Ava Coleman. During the summer of 2019, 2 Georgia teens were arrested for staging a kidnapping in an attempt to gain popularity online. The incident unfolded on the day before the 4th of July at around 6:00 p.m. when Forsyth County deputies responded to multiple 911 calls at a shopping center in Cumming. Witnesses had reported a possible abduction after seeing a woman being forced into an SUV with a covering over her head while screaming for help. More than half of all available deputies sprang into action and began searching for the SUV, which was spotted and pulled over by an off-duty Gwinnett County police officer. Cops from multiple agencies rushed to the scene, where they learned that the vehicle's occupants had been filming a prank and that no one was in danger. After causing a panic among members of the public and dangerous conditions on the road due to the urgency of the pursuit, 19-year-old Christopher Kratzer and 17-year-old Ava Coleman were charged with felony counts of reckless conduct and raising a false public alarm. Number 23. Rachelle Badour-Taha. In February 2024, police in Melbourne, Australia, attempted to pull over a grey Land Rover that was seen driving erratically in the city's Domain Tunnel, which runs beneath the Yarra River. The driver sped off and managed to evade law enforcement for the time being. When law enforcement later confronted the vehicle's 22-year-old owner, she told them that a 23-year-old man had been driving the Land Rover at the time of the incident. Police arrested the male suspect only to later realize that he had not been driving the vehicle. The man admitted that he had lied to the cops, claiming that a 25-year-old lawyer named Rachelle Badour-Taha had asked him to say he was the driver. 4 people were charged with perverting the course of justice in the case, including Badour-Taha and a 31-year-old man who police identified as the driver, as well as the Land Rover's owner and the man who had lied to law enforcement. The suspects were arrested following an investigation by the Viper Task Force, which specializes in combating organized and serious crime. Just months earlier, Badour-Taha and another attorney, 34-year-old Zoe Davis, had been accused of doctoring a medical certificate for the benefit of a client. The case was ongoing at the time of Badour-Taha's arrest for the Land Rover incident, and both she and Davis are currently suspended from practicing law. Number 22. Brianna Radley. Dubbed the Schuylkill River Trail Killers, 24-year-olds Marquis Johnson and Cody Reed are serving life sentences for the murder of 25-year-old Daquan Tucker, who was gunned down in cold blood in March of 2023. The defendants were found guilty of the crime in June of 2024 and they were sentenced in August. Authorities also pursued a case against Johnson's girlfriend, 22-year-old Brianna Rose Radley, who was accused of helping Johnson and Reed hide out after Tucker's murder. According to prosecutors, Radley helped the men leave the Norristown area after the crime and paid for several Airbnb bookings in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. In the meantime, she lied to a grand jury and said that she didn't know where the suspects were. U.S. Marshals apprehended the accused murderers in Atlantic City, New Jersey, more than a month after the killing. Radley and Cody Reed's girlfriend, 21-year-old Haley Ann Kovlins, were charged with perjury and conspiracy to hinder apprehension. In October 2024, Radley was convicted of the charges and sentenced to 9 to 23 months in county jail, followed by 2 years of probation. She apologized during her sentencing hearing, blaming her actions on immaturity and carelessness, while the judge described the young woman's unlawful behavior as egregious and said that he felt compelled to impose prison time because anything less would depreciate the seriousness of her crimes. Radley later appealed her sentence, but the punishment was upheld. Kovlins pleaded guilty to the charges and received the same sentence after her defense attorney failed to persuade the judge to place her on house arrest. Number 21. Stephen Wiggins. What began as an ordinary afternoon in Dixon County, Tennessee in May of 2018, Sheriff's Sergeant Daniel Baker responded to a report about a suspicious vehicle. A satin sedan was sitting still in the road in the wrong lane and a man in the driver's seat. Daniel Wiggins told Baker that he had a flat tire and was waiting for assistance. He did not give Baker his driver's license, but instead provided a social security number, which turned out to be fake. While running the vehicle's license plate, Baker learned that the car had been reported stolen. He ordered Wiggins and a female passenger, Erica Castro-Miles, to step outside the car. Instead of complying, Wiggins pulled a .45 caliber handgun and fired 5 shots. At least one of the bullets struck Baker while he tried to run away, causing him to collapse onto the ground. Wiggins fired 5 more shots before placing Baker's body in the backseat of his patrol car and speeding off in the vehicle while Castro-Miles rode in the passenger seat. The fleeing suspects drove to a site 4 miles away from the shooting scene, where Wiggins attempted to set the squad car on fire. By the time police found the vehicle and Baker's partially burned body, Wiggins and Castro-Miles were nowhere in sight. A few days later, a Tennessee Highway Patrol trooper spotted Wiggins near a wooded area in Hickman County. He knew based on the suspect's tattoos that he had found the accused cop killer. Wiggins surrendered without incident despite being in possession of 2 handguns, bringing the 10th manhunt to a much-welcomed end. He lied several times during questioning, claiming that he had tried to perform CPR on Baker, which was untrue, and that he had fired the gunshots in quick succession without pausing, which was also untrue. While explaining his decision to repeatedly shoot Baker in the head, Wiggins said that he wanted to make sure the sergeant was dead so that he didn't suffer, comparing his actions to the way a person might put an injured animal out of its misery. He pleaded not guilty to premeditated and first-degree murder, but was found guilty at trial in 2021 and was sentenced to life without parole. A judge denied Wiggins' request for a new trial in 2024. Erica Castro-Miles pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in 2022 and is serving a 15-year prison sentence. Number 20. Richard Ayvazyan and Marietta Terabelian. During the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, a California family filed more than 150 fraudulent applications for U.S. government loans that were meant to help small businesses stay afloat. The group of 8 scammers obtained more than $20 million using fake payroll and tax paperwork, representing sham businesses that didn't really exist, and they spent the money lavishly. 2 of the fraudsters, couple Richard Ayvazyan and Marietta Terabelian, used $640,000 of the ill-gotten funds as a down payment on a $3.25 million Mediterranean-style villa in Tarzana. During a raid on the property in November 2020, federal agents recovered $450,000 in cash that 37-year-old Terabelian had spilled onto the front lawn while fleeing the scene. They also seized gold coins and expensive jewelry, including a $35,000 Rolex that 43-year-old Ayvazyan had purchased during an undoubtedly upscale vacation to the Turks and Caicos Islands. In June of 2021, Ayvazyan and Terabelian were convicted for their roles as the conspiracy's ringleaders. They were awaiting sentencing when they cut off their ankle bracelets 2 months later and fled the country, sparking an international manhunt. They were still on the run in January 2022 when they were joined by Ayvazyan's sister-in-law, Tamara Dadian, who skipped town after being given 30 days to surrender and begin serving a 10-year prison term. In the meantime, Ayvazyan was sentenced in absentia to 17 years in prison, while Terabelian received a 6-year sentence. In February 2022, authorities captured Ayvazyan, Terabelian, and Dadian in Montenegro. They were extradited to the United States several months later and are currently serving out their punishments. Number 19. Austin Bradburn. While working the graveyard shift in Towns County, Georgia in December of 2024, 26-year-old Sheriff's Deputy Austin Bradburn informed his colleagues that he had been shot in the leg during a traffic stop in Young Harris. He told agents with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation that the gun had discharged during the struggle over the weapon with the suspect, who had sped away from the scene. A manhunt was launched based on Bradburn's narrative, but location data from the laptop in his patrol car and other evidence conflicted with his story, leading to the conclusion that he had lied to GBI agents about what had really happened. It's unclear which aspects of his account are thought to be untrue, and there are other lingering questions surrounding the case, including who's responsible for Bradburn's gunshot wound. According to reports, Bradburn made false statements in Union and Hall counties throughout the course of the investigation. He's therefore facing a total of 10 charges in both counties, including misdemeanor false report of a crime and felony violation of oath by a public officer. The GBI announced the charges in an official statement, but declined to go into detail about the more mysterious aspects of the case. Number 18. Princess Ilunga. Shortly after 6 a.m. on January 26, 2025, police in Rock Island, Illinois, received a call from 37-year-old mother of 7, Princess Ilunga, who claimed that Her car had been stolen with her young daughter inside. Authorities immediately issued an Amber Alert and posted the child's photo on social media, where it was shared 40,000 times in a matter of minutes. Just 15 minutes after receiving Ilunga's 911 call, however, officers located her car just a few blocks away. No one was in it, and the missing girl was found in an alleyway near her home several hours later. Investigators determined that Ilunga's daughter was never missing, and that Ilunga had deliberately hidden the girl. The only thing she appeared to tell the truth about was her stolen car. Police also discovered that the girl was being hidden in plain sight while officers spoke with Ilunga at her home. Ilunga had introduced the girl as one of her other children, and could be heard saying that she looks just like her sister in body cam footage of the conversation. The case was quickly unraveled, thanks to help from an officer who spoke fluent Swahili and could understand what Ilunga was saying to her kids right in front of law enforcement. After apparently realizing that the police were onto her lies, Ilunga packed up her kids and fled the area. She was pulled over and arrested in Johnson County, Wisconsin, several hours later, and is facing a charge for filing a false report. Number 17. Phillip DeWoody. 72-year-old Joyce Thomas vanished after she was seen leaving her Ville Platte, Louisiana apartment complex in a man's car on February 26, 2020. Later that day, her family received calls from Thomas's cell phone. They were greeted by a male suspect who demanded a ransom in exchange for the senior citizen's safe return and instructed the relatives not to call the police. The kidnapper also sent family members a video message which showed Thomas inside an abandoned house. 4 days after the elderly woman was abducted, her murdered body was found on a property between Sunset and Opelousas, which sat adjacent to the abandoned house seen in the video clip. Police made the discovery with help from another recent kidnapping victim, whom they believed had been abducted by the same suspect. Based on their findings, investigators identified 52-year-old Phillip DeWoody as the suspected kidnapper in both cases. During questioning, DeWoody claimed that he had driven Thomas from her apartment building to a local Walmart store and that he hadn't seen or heard from her since. A review of the store's surveillance footage failed to substantiate this claim, and cell phone location data showed DeWoody and Thomas traveling together on the day the victim disappeared, just months earlier, in June of 2019. DeWoody had been released from prison 91 years early. He had a lengthy list of prior convictions, including for armed robbery, kidnapping, and aggravated escape, and he was on parole at the time of Thomas's murder. The ex-convict changed his story numerous times throughout his conversation with police, at one point claiming that he had seen Thomas getting into an SUV and driving off with a group of men who were on their way to a casino. He finally confessed months later, and in March of 2021 he pleaded guilty to murder, assault, and kidnapping in order to avoid the death penalty. The decision to take capital punishment off the table was made in consultation with the victims' families, who approved of the plea deal and the 3 consecutive life terms that came along with it. Number 16. Tiffany Henderson. On what began as an ordinary Tuesday evening in Nassau Bay, Texas, in December of 2019, Sergeant Callia Sullivan and a fellow officer pulled over 21-year-old Tavores Dwayne Henderson, who was wanted on an outstanding warrant for allegedly assaulting a family member 10 months earlier. Instead of going into custody willingly, Henderson managed to break away from the officers while they were trying to arrest him. He got into his car and ran over 43-year-old Sullivan while fleeing the scene. Sullivan died from her injuries, and authorities wasted no time launching a manhunt for Henderson the day after the murder. Law enforcement paid a visit to the young man's mother, 37-year-old Tiffany Henderson, who denied knowing who her son was or where he was 2 days after the killing. Police received a tip that Henderson was hiding out at a home in Houston. Officers flocked to the property, where they allowed Tiffany to go inside first and speak with her son. She convinced Henderson to surrender, and he was taken into custody without incident. As helpful as Tiffany may have seemed, further investigation revealed that she had lied to police for days about knowing where her son was. She and her boyfriend, 33-year-old Jeffrey Wheeler, had picked Henderson up after the ill-fated traffic stop and driven him more than 30 miles to a hotel, where Tiffany and Tavores were seen together in surveillance footage. When asked by police why she had lied, Tiffany stated, "Because I am a mom," while Wheeler simply said that he was scared. More than 5 years later, Tavores Henderson remains in pre-trial detention on charges of capital murder, aggravated assault, and having a prohibited substance inside a correctional facility. Tiffany Henderson and Jeffrey Wheeler were charged with hindering apprehension, but are not currently in state or local custody, leaving the current status of their cases unclear. Number 15. the Balloon Boy Hoax. On October 15, 2009, news stations in and around Fort Collins, Colorado were inundated with reports that the young son of Richard and Mayumi Heen, a little boy named Falcon, was trapped in a homemade helium balloon that looked like a flying saucer. It was a terrifying thought, considering the fact that the balloon reached altitudes as high as 7,000 feet during its 90-minute flight. Local authorities and members of the National Guard chased after the balloon for over an hour, covering a distance of roughly 50 miles. By the time it finally landed 12 miles outside Denver National Airport, law enforcement had received an influx of reports that an object had been seen falling out of the balloon. A ground search ensued, only for police to find the little boy hiding out in the attic of his home later that day. He had been there the entire time. Later that evening, a Larry King Live reporter asked Falcon why he was hiding. He responded that he did it because his parents instructed him to for the show. The little boy's honesty quickly gave rise to widespread suspicions that his parents had planned the entire harrowing ordeal as a hoax, prompting law enforcement to investigate after initially saying that they had no reason to believe the incident was an elaborate performance. Investigators concluded that Richard and Mayumi Heen had staged the incident as a publicity stunt. According to an affidavit, they planned it as far as 2 weeks in advance and coached their children on what lies to tell to reporters and police. Their motive? In the words of the affidavit, to make the family more marketable for future media interests. Richard pleaded guilty to one felony count of attempting to influence a public servant and was ordered to serve 90 days in jail and pay $36,000 in restitution. Mayumi was sentenced to 20 days of weekend jail. Number 14. Haliey Welch. In late 2024, viral influencer Haliey Welch, better known as the Hawk Tour Girl, launched a cryptocurrency called the Hawk Tour Coin. It quickly rose to a value of nearly $500 million before crashing hard, causing investors to lose large amounts of money and leading to allegations of insider trading. There was also speculation that the coin was launched as part of a pump and dump scheme. 22-year-old Welch and her team denied any wrongdoing, stating that they did not sell any tokens. She appears to remain in the clear for now, but the coin's creators are being sued based on the allegations that unlawfully promoting and selling cryptocurrency that was allegedly never properly registered. In a statement posted to her social media, Welch said that she was fully cooperating with a legal team representing the plaintiffs. She also expressed her commitment to getting to the bottom of the situation and holding the responsible parties accountable. Number 13. Maikel Martinez. 31-year-old Asfia Natasha was driving on the Belt Parkway in Long Island, New York, and talking to her husband on the phone in October 2024 when the driver of a Honda Civic cut her off and slammed on their brakes. Natasha immediately slammed on the brake and managed to avoid hitting the sedan, at which point the driver threw the Civic into reverse and rammed into her front bumper, causing an estimated $8,300 worth of damage. To make an already bizarre situation even weirder, the Civic's 4 occupants then held a tarp over the back window while switching seats inside the vehicle. They then exited the car with the woman stepping out of the driver's side. A male passenger, who was later identified as 28-year-old Maikel Martinez of Dyker Heights, Brooklyn, introduced himself as the woman's husband. Investigators later confirmed Natasha's suspicion that she had been targeted in an insurance scam. 3 weeks after the incident, police arrested Martinez as he arrived back in the US on a flight from Ecuador. He was charged with staging a motor vehicle accident, criminal mischief, reckless endangerment, conspiracy, and insurance fraud. If convicted on all counts, he could face 2 years and 4 months to 7 years in prison. Under New York state law, none of these crimes are bail eligible. Left with no other choice, the judge released Martinez ahead of his next court hearing and ordered him to surrender his passport. In the meantime, Natasha's dash cam footage of the incident went viral, garnering tens of millions of views on TikTok. In an updated video following Martinez's arrest, she thanked her fans for their support and the NYPD for their hard work, and said that she was extremely happy that at least one of the suspects had been caught. Number 12. Brandi Lee Weaver-Gates. In March of 2013, 24-year-old former beauty queen Brandi Lee Weaver-Gates told her loved ones that she was suffering from leukemia. The State College, Pennsylvania residents, friends, and family helped in any way they could, including by throwing fundraisers and driving her to treatment. But they eventually began to question the woman's diagnosis when Weaver-Gates insisted on going inside the hospital alone for her chemotherapy, and when her hair quickly started to grow back after she shaved her head. The truth started to come out in mid-2015 when Pennsylvania State Police received an anonymous letter urging them to investigate Weaver-Gates for faking her illness. Skeptical supporters had discovered that the woman was not a patient at any of the medical facilities she claimed to be receiving treatment at. She was also unable to provide basic information that most cancer patients wouldn't have to think twice about, including the names of the doctors who were supposedly overseeing her care. Weaver-Gates had lied about having cancer, all the while receiving tens of thousands of dollars in donations, including from real cancer patients and survivors. Following her arrest on felony counts of theft by deception and receiving stolen property in August 2015, she was stripped of her Miss Pennsylvania crown and booked into jail on a 6-figure bond. In July of 2016, Weaver-Gates pleaded guilty and admitted to scamming 150 people out of $30,000 total. She was sentenced to 2 to 4 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. The disgraced former beauty queen apologized to her victims and vowed to repay every penny that she had fraudulently received, while acknowledging that many people would probably not find it in their hearts to forgive her. Number 11. Victoria Morrison. During the spring of 2017, someone contacted law enforcement in Carson City, Nevada, with claims that a local mother was faking her son's death for crowdfunding donations. The tipster said that they had spoken with the husband of 31-year-old Victoria Morrison, who had confirmed that the couple's child was alive and well. During the investigation that followed, deputies visited Morrison at her home. She claimed that her son had recently passed away from leukemia and that a friend had created the fundraising webpage to help her out. Police also spoke with the child's teacher, who had given Morrison $200 worth of gift cards after being notified of the boy's supposed death. After being unable to locate a death certificate, investigators located Morrison's son, who appeared to be in good health, and said he felt fine. Morrison was arrested for her crimes, and in May of 2018, she pleaded guilty to a child neglect or endangerment charge. She was sentenced to 5 to 12.5 years in prison and was paroled in 2023. Number 10. Henry Lee Lucas. Virginia-born serial killer Henry Lee Lucas had already been paroled twice for prior murder convictions, including for the death of his own mother when he was arrested in Texas on a gun charge. While in custody, he was questioned about the murders of his teenage girlfriend, Becky Powell, and his 82-year-old landlord, Kate Rich, who were killed over a several-week period during the summer of 1982. Lucas confessed to both murders and also claimed to be responsible for more than 100 other killings across the United States. He would eventually confess to hundreds of murders, and at first he was more or less treated like a rock star by law enforcement officials who traveled from all around the country to interview him about their unsolved cases. But Lucas ended up confessing to so many crimes that it would have literally been impossible for him to have committed them all. After realizing that they were being duped, and discovering that Lucas had accessed files for some cases before taking credit for them, authorities established a task force specifically for determining which murders Lucas had actually committed and which confessions were false. Lucas was ultimately convicted of 11 murders, and while the true number of victims may never be known, some continue to believe that he was responsible for a massive number of killings. Number 9. Latarsha Brown. While working as a City Hall employee in Allentown, Pennsylvania, in January of 2025, Latarsha Brown called the local police and said she had found a noose on her desk after arriving at her job that morning. Community members were initially outraged by what seemed like a cruel hate crime, but as investigators worked the case, they eliminated all of Brown's co-workers who could have placed the noose on her desk as suspects. According to reports, everyone except Brown readily provided their DNA and were all cleared of any wrongdoing. And while Brown had initially cooperated with the investigation, she had an apparent change of heart and asked the authorities to stop looking into the matter. Police obtained a warrant for her DNA, which turned up as a match to the only DNA that was found on the noose. In March of 2025, Brown was charged with misdemeanor counts of tampering with evidence and making a false report. She remains employed with the city, but the vocal outpouring of support she initially received from the community has quieted down significantly. Number 8. David Szach. In 1979, 19-year-old David Szach was convicted of murdering his living romantic partner of 3 years. 44-year-old lawyer Durrance Stevenson at their home in the Australian city of Adelaide. Several months earlier, Stevenson's body had been found stuffed into a freezer that was superglued shut. He had been shot in the back of the head, and suspicion quickly fell on Szach, who was driving the victim's car when he was arrested. Szach always maintained his innocence, and some of the key evidence that was used to convict him had been processed by a forensic pathologist with no official credentials and who had been discredited in numerous other cases. Following his release from prison in 1993, Szach resumed his efforts to clear his name. After being rejected for a legal grant to help pay for a lawyer, he contacted the documentary show Frozen Lies and asked them to investigate his case. After reviewing the evidence for a year and a half, the show's experts concluded that Szach was guilty of murdering Stevenson and that he had most likely helped to conceal others' involvement in the crime, leaving him both shocked and disappointed. But he still has supporters, including at least one expert who has called for the overturning of his conviction, and his efforts to prove his innocence are ongoing. Number 7. Kent van der Kamp. Also known as a Giglio list, a Brady list is used for tracking members of law enforcement with credibility issues. While this type of document is not legally binding, it's a place where no police officer wants their name to land, especially a top cop who heads an entire agency. But that's what happened in Deschutes County, Oregon, in April 2025, when Sheriff Kent van der Kamp was placed on a Brady list for giving false testimony in criminal cases. According to District Attorney Steve Gunnels, van der Kamp lied at least once and possibly dozens of times, possibly impacting the outcomes of an unknown number of cases. Due to these alleged credibility issues, Gunnels said he will no longer call on van der Kamp to testify during court proceedings. When contacted by a reporter from the Bulletin, van der Kamp said he knew nothing about why he would be placed on a Brady list in Deschutes County. An investigation is ongoing, but for the time being, officials have declined to go into detail about the nature of the sheriff's alleged dishonesty. Number 6. Larry Brown. On a January evening in early 2025, police officers responded to an armed robbery call at a Walmart supercenter in Hoover, Alabama. The 911 caller had told the dispatcher that a man was pointing a gun at a woman, but law enforcement found no evidence of a crime in progress. A short while later, one of the responding officers returned to the area he was patrolling before the call came in. He noticed that a suspicious vehicle he had been watching earlier was gone. Upon further investigation, police discovered that the vehicle's owner, 54-year-old Larry Brown, had made the 911 call, leading to the theory that he was trying to distract law enforcement so he could make a clean getaway from the area. 2 weeks later, Brown was arrested on suspicion of false reporting to law enforcement. He was the first person to be charged under a bill that was passed in the wake of the Carly Russell kidnapping hoax, which makes it a felony to make a false report alleging imminent danger to a person. Brown was booked into the Hoover City Jail but no longer appears to be in custody, indicating that he's likely free on bond. Number 5. Thelma Ballew. 18-year-old Justin Gaines was last seen in the parking lot of a Duluth, Georgia nightclub called Wild Bill's at around 1:30 in the morning on November 2nd, 2007. He was a regular there, and on that particular night he was trying to find a ride to his mother's Snellville home, but he never made it there, and he remains missing to this day. At the time, Gaines was facing criminal charges for an incident that had occurred several months earlier. In that particular case, he had been found passed out in his car with a bottle of vodka and a fake ID. He failed to attend a court hearing 3 weeks after he was last seen alive, causing his family to become increasingly fearful that something terrible had happened. In 2011, a federal inmate named Dylan Glass told investigators that Gaines had been shot during an altercation with him and his mother, Thelma Ballew. He claimed that he and Ballew proceeded to stuff the body into a toolbox and dispose of it in Walton County. Investigators spoke to Ballew, who was also serving federal time in an unrelated case, and she provided a location where she claimed the victim's body could be found. But a search of the area failed to turn up the remains, and Ballew was charged with making false statements and write-ins. Gaines remains missing to this day, and authorities continue to believe that foul play was involved. Number 4. Tyler Chase Douglas. Shortly after noon on March 20th, 2025, sheriff's deputies in Lee County, Georgia, responded to a call about an armed robbery at a Walmart store. A man claiming to be the victim, Tyler Chase Douglas, claimed that a man had stolen his money at gunpoint before calmly strolling away from the scene. Chase then returned to his job before deciding to call 911. He gave conflicting stories about the incident, and further investigation revealed that no robbery had happened. In fact, Chase wasn't even at the Walmart store when the incident supposedly occurred. After determining that he was lying, law enforcement arrested him on charges of false report of a crime and false statements and writings. In a Facebook post, the Lee County Sheriff's Office reminded the public that false reports waste both time and resources, which are best spent responding to real crimes. The post concluded with a polite but sternly worded caution about how anyone who knowingly calls 911 for the wrong reasons might receive an unexpected ride to the county jail. Number 3. Ann Crall. In 2005, Ann Crall of Highlands Ranch, Colorado, began telling people that she had stage 4 cancer and would soon be starting treatment. Over the next 4 years, the 20-something police officer's wife received money, food, and other donations from friends, neighbors, and church members. Many of these contributions were given during charity events in Crall's honor, including a large fundraising event where attendees wore t-shirts that said, "Run, ride, walk, or crawl." But to some, Crall didn't seem sick. Her cancer was supposedly terminal, yet she showed no noticeable effects of the disease. In 2009, the Lakewood Police Employee Assistance Foundation asked Crall for documentation of her diagnosis. She turned over a record that appeared to be from a local cancer clinic, but it had been forged. A deeper look into Crall's past turned up a troubling criminal history, including past charges for fraudulently obtaining drugs. In 2010, she was convicted of theft and charitable fraud for receiving roughly 1,000 donations totaling roughly $60,000 for her fake cancer. Crall managed to avoid making any major news headlines for a few years afterward, but landed in the spotlight again in July of 2014 when she was arrested for violating the terms of her probation. She had reportedly forged and falsified documents from her employer in a bid to persuade her probation officer not to take action against her for failing to comply with the conditions of her release. Crall was sentenced to more prison time, but that wasn't the end of her troubles. In late 2019, she was charged with theft by deception after an office manager at her job noticed suspicious activity on a company credit card account and reported it to law enforcement. News reports state that Crall had been working at a chiropractor's office for just 3 days when the suspicious activity began. While the outcome of that particular case is unclear, Crall does not appear to be in state custody at this time. Today's topic was requested by Sean Delap 8587. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Kenny Victoria. In September 2024, a Bronx-based NYPD officer was indicted on multiple charges for lying about 2 separate incidents, including a vehicle crash and an assault involving a piece of his work equipment. The first incident occurred in the South Bronx in mid-December of 2023, when Victoria's partner struck a motorcycle rider with their patrol car as the vehicle turned into an intersection. In a report, the 9-year NYPD veteran wrote that the biker was doing a wheelie and drove into his cruiser. The injured biker was arrested on charges of criminal mischief and reckless endangerment, although surveillance video later revealed that Victoria had hit the biker, not the other way around. Victoria reportedly lied to cover up for his partner. The second incident, which landed Victoria in hot water with the law, happened in late April of 2024, when he allegedly struck a suspect in the head with his police radio while responding to a call about a man with a gun. Following an investigation into both incidents, Victoria was charged with official misconduct, offering a false instrument in the first degree, second degree offering a false instrument for filing, and second degree falsifying records. A second indictment charged him with official misconduct, second degree assault, and third degree assault. Records showed that Victoria was disciplined in 2019 for strip searching a suspect in a holding cell without the proper authority to do so. He was docked 8 vacation days as a penalty. Victoria has also been named as a defendant in 8 lawsuits since 2018, including several cases involving allegations of excessive force and assaulting suspects without cause. Additionally, he's been accused of wrongfully arresting, falsely accusing people of crimes, and wrongfully detaining people. In June of 2020, Victoria and another officer were accused of ramming into a woman's car in the middle of the night while driving an unmarked NYPD-owned vehicle and working in plain clothes. According to the complainant, the officers exited their vehicle with their guns drawn and approached the car that they had just hit. The cops ordered the vehicle's 4 occupants to freeze while threatening to smoke them, then pulled them out of the car and arrested them without probable cause. 2 of the lawsuits are ongoing, and Victoria is currently assigned to the NYPD's military and extended leave desk amid his ongoing criminal cases. Number 1. Stephen Pankey. After performing in a Christmas concert at her school in December 1984, choir member Jonelle Matthews was dropped off at her Greeley, Colorado residence by her friend's family. Her parents and sister were not home at the time, and when Jonelle's father returned later that evening, the 7th grader was nowhere to be found. She was never seen alive again. And while police believed she had met with foul play and was no longer alive, the identity of her killer remained a mystery for many years. In 2019, oil and gas workers discovered Jonelle's remains in rural Weld County. 15 months later, a grand jury indicted a previous person of interest, Stephen Pankey, on charges of murder, kidnapping, and false reporting. Pankey was not even on law enforcement's radar during the early stages of the case, but he repeatedly inserted himself in the investigation over the years, to the point where he seemed obsessed with Jonelle. Prosecutors accused Pankey of abducting Jonelle from her home and shooting her to death. He maintained his innocence, and his first trial ended in a hung jury, who found him guilty of the false reporting charge but couldn't reach a consensus on the murder and kidnapping charges. In 2022, the 71-year-old defendant was found guilty of the kidnapping and murder charges. Pankey was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison and will be 89 years old when he becomes eligible for parole in 2040. Thanks for watching. If you were sentenced to 5 years in prison for a crime you committed, but you had the option to have an innocent person serve 2 years in prison instead, would you sign off on that or not? And why or why not? Let us know in the comments section below.